Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Tim Piotrowski from ASCM, and welcome to a live stream sneak peek of the upcoming ASCM Connect conference in Brussels, happening on the 4th and 5th of June. And joining me today is Deborah Dull, founder of the Circular Supply Chain Network. She's also Vice President, Global Supply Chain Sustainability Leader at Genpact. And also joining me is Peter Bolsdorf, ASCM Executive Vice President of Innovation and Business Intelligence. Take it away, Deborah and Peter.
Thanks, Tim. My title is way too long, and it's kind of like the rest of the AI stuff that we've got going on right now. So what we're really excited to share with you today is why you should come to Brussels and what you're going to get out of it. And we want to kind of dial in on this idea around sustainability and circularity, both of which Deborah and I have a lot of passion around. So we're going to break this down into three topics. Topic one is going to be the pre-conference and SCORE. The second one is really going to be about our partnership with Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And then the third one is a cool new topic that Deborah's going to bring to us and kind of enlighten us around. So Deborah, let's just kind of park our first conversation around SCORE DS and sustainability and circularity as part of the pre-conference.
Amazing. We know we both love SCORE on a different level, and would love to give a plug here in a short introduction, but then would also love for you to share, Peter, your history and interest in SCORE. Look, the SCORE model, we've all heard of it, I hope, and most everybody understands the process piece of the SCORE model. But taking a step back, SCORE is really a standard for our field. So we've all sat in front of a blank whiteboard before and said, gosh, how are we going to work with our partners, our lines of business, our sales and marketing team? How are we going to describe the activities that we're doing? How are we going to define what good looks like? What skills do we need to make sure our team has to accomplish this vision, this transformation, this initiative that we have going on? And we often start from scratch. But the purpose of a standard is that we have a starting place. And that's what is exciting and interesting about the SCORE model. It is now free. So if you go in Google or do a Bing search or whatever search engine you use, you can go and find it, zoom around and check it out. I used the SCORE model during my master's thesis a decade ago to figure out if a digital supply chain, as in moving bits and bytes, Kindle or Netflix, is that an actual supply chain? So I have read every word of the SCORE model and really appreciate it. So if you haven't checked it out, go check it out. My favorite process standard, of course, is called OE13, and you can go look it up and find out why. But Peter, what's your history with SCORE?
I was a delegate from 3M in 1996 when the first thing was launched. So I kind of dove into the plan thing and did lots of projects with it. And then consequently wrote that down into a book. I think the thing that I want to embark to or really get across to the listeners today is the way we've organized this pre-conference workshop is really a conversation among people who have used SCORE to do something. And we've got 9, including Deborah and myself. We've got 9 folks that are going to share their experiences across a bunch of different categories. And I've paired Deborah. It's like the perfect pairing. Deborah and Matteo Coppola from Kellanova, which is really going to talk about circularity. How do we use SCORE to really define how do I design a circular supply chain? And then how do I measure the so what, the impact? And I know Kellanova has been very focused on sustainable packaging and those kind of things. So again, the SCORE pre-conference workshop is intended to have thought leaders share their experience around how have I used it? How can I use it? To not miss on that particular one. And we will absolutely deep dive into Orchestrate, which is, for those of you that don't know, is a new process that we brought out in the SCORE DS from that standpoint. Any last words on the SCORE pre-conference, Deborah?
Final plug, I had the pleasure of meeting Matteo at last year's event in Brussels, and our conversations have continued very positively, and it represents the whole purpose, of course, of coming together in person, is that we can ping each other for different ideas. Have you seen this? What do you think of this? And just be able to interact with each other as professionals, which sometimes can be tough if we only do virtual because you don't have any of that time in between the sessions. So really looking forward to unpacking circularity in the score model with him.
Perfect. And those of you that are asking yourself, you mean you actually developed a relationship that actually carried on after the workshop. That's what makes us really unique, is this idea around connection. All right, next topic. So we are fully leveraging your time in Brussels, Deborah. So I know when we were going through the conversations with Ellen MacArthur a number of years ago, the whole idea around this circularity and how do I measure the degree of circularity, the materiality, how do I know what good looks like, and how am I advancing towards that? Love you to share the panel that we're talking about around circularity and that kind of an impact.
Absolutely. Small plug. So Ellen MacArthur is a fantastic leader. She used to do solo circumnavigation sailing around the world, and she holds lots of records there. And one day she was out on her boat and realized that just as she would eventually run out of supplies in her boat, the planet would run out of supplies for our economies. And so she came back and researched this topic, and ultimately has really cheerleaded, showcased, shown a huge light on, and galvanized the world around this concept of a circular economy. So how do we prevent more items going into our economy every year and use what we already have? And if we can do that, we can actually regenerate what we have so that future generations, future supply chains, or even 15 years from now, we've got plenty of resources to use. So that's the foundation who really drives the work around circularity. And I'm absolutely tickled happy that ASCM and EMF have started this relationship, because if we think about the two standard holders, for circularity, it's Ellen MacArthur; for supply chain, it's ASCM. And the nonprofit that I have the pleasure of leading, the Circular Supply Chain Network, happily has played a role in this bridge. So last year, we all worked together to develop a white paper on supply chain. There's a great little video on the Ellen MacArthur Foundation website if you look up Building a Circular Supply Chain. It's also on our website at circularsupplychain.network. And together, we're going to unpack some of the learning. So we found how do we all collectively define how a circular supply chain is different than a linear one. So the world we live in today is more or less materials move in a line. We use materials for some period of time and then typically throw them away. And as we learn more about after life of our products, I think we all as consumers get rather disturbed about what happens if we donate clothing, for example, or throw food in landfill, or finding now that actually the methane produced is much higher from our landfills than we thought previously. And then if we can take those aha moments into our professional lives, the impact we all have as supply chain professionals is just so massive. The policies we set, how we execute, the way that we work with our partners, how we choose to set up our networks, the materials we allow to flow through our supply chains, all have huge and far-reaching implications. So we'll unpack some of those, but we'll also have a reality check. We found that there's lots of challenges in trying to turn a 100-year-old way of doing our economy. So we'll unpack some of that and give you some words of advice and guidance.
Great. And again, just want to encourage folks, again, when we think about this idea around you're watching a group of thought leaders, the thought leaders then become part of the audience. And so the experience that we're having at the conference is not just listen to a PowerPoint, it's actually engage. And I know your use of engagement tools, Deborah's, in the upper quartile. So very excited about that one. The last thing, and we are honored to have you talk about a new cool thing. I know as part of my role now, we're actually putting together an AI strategy on how does the future of learning and supply chain, kind of crash together with the technology advancements. And I think every dimension, every discipline, everywhere has to start contemplating the leverage of technology to be able to do things better. And it's not just necessarily cheaper, but it's better, faster, and more effectively as we think about that one. So love you to give us a sneak peek on your new idea.
Absolutely. I'm really excited for this. This is going to be a brand new keynote for me. And the idea is, look, what if our supply chains were smarter? So we have all the technology to do this idea of what many call a self-driving supply chain. Sometimes they're called self-healing. an autonomous supply chain, a lights out supply chain. And I've thought about this concept for a long time because on the surface, it's actually in conflict with the idea of circularity, where we repair everything. So everything becomes a unique item, and it's tough to repair everything with a lights out. So lights out manufacturing and repairing everything seem at the surface to be in conflict. But as we start to unpack these specific cases of why would we use a self-driving supply chain, where does it make sense? What does it really mean to self-drive? And then we start to bounce that up against running a better supply chain, better for the world, better for the human beings that are interacting with our value chains all the way around the world. And we start to imagine, can technology actually be a helper in trying to unlock better supply chain performance, better sustainability performance, better experiences for the communities and people that we impact? Or is it going to backfire on us? And as we start to go into this phase of truly hyper-connected supply chains that somehow yet also still run on Excel, and start to imagine what this technology transition
that is a whole nother conversation, by the way.
Not this panel. That is not this discussion. But we are at this cusp, and it's really, really interesting. So I think we owe it to ourselves and the world, frankly, to be really intentional with how we design the decisions we make around what can be automated, where in the world. And that's everything from the way we scrape to define demand sensing, all the way to actually physically self-driving vehicles, and how are these safe, and what's the role of human beings. So we're going to unpack that. I think you're giving me an hour, so we'll see if I've got that whole time. But as you mentioned, I love to engage. And so these are participative keynotes. And hopefully you'll all walk away with something new.
So I want to dive in, right? So again, we're curious learners, right? So one of the things that I thought was one of the coolest charts I've seen is kind of a waste stream, right? So you say, from this thing, here's all of the waste streams from this particular finished good. So you start with a finished good, and then you look at the waste streams, and at the end you have these components of waste. The day that we can turn those components of waste into a marketplace where, you remember that, again, I'm dating myself right now. Remember the Thomas guides? You don't remember. You're too young for the
I do.
Okay, so they were like this thick, and every procurement person had these Thomas guides that said, hey, look, this is what I need. But imagine you put an AI application on these waste streams, that has volumes and has values and all those kind of things. I think those are the kind of innovations, exactly as you just described, that will enable us to be smarter about what can I reuse, what can I repurpose, which again keeps things out of the landfill. So
absolutely,
super excited about that.
But we're going to challenge that. So my very, very first keynote I gave on the circular supply chain concept, thank you to Jenny Froome in Cape Town. Very excited for the SAPEX conference in June. And that was 6-7 years ago. And I had posed this question, which challenges our idea of how do I deal with my waste, which I think is how a lot of folks approach circularity. And instead, think about what's coming in. Think about your demand on a market. And what if we only could source reused goods? And so the question I had posed is, if we could just fix supply, we could never access virgin materials again. Does that solve the problem? Would the market correct itself within 6 months, let's say? And of course, we don't have a parallel universe, so we can't try it out. But this idea of what we bring in, of course, influencing something else. And there's great work from innovative organizations like the Excess Materials Exchange who are doing that. They're using AI. They're saying, what are the characteristics of the material that you need instead of the actual material or component or finished good? And how do we smartly pair, ideally regionally pair? But it's a tough one. It's a chicken and egg problem for these marketplaces right now who are out on the forefront. So we will dive in, and I assure you, SCORE will play a role in that discussion.
One last plug. So again, and Tim will get back on here shortly and talk about our flash sale, but we are going to be unveiling a new thing. So we've, again, trying to expand this footprint around innovation. We have come upon an organization, a startup organization, that is actually converting recycled polyester into new thread. And so we've been able to garner their their technical expertise. So stay tuned, because that's going to be a session that shows up in Brussels. It's also going to be a session that shows up in the U.S. So with that, Deborah, I know you are busy. I know we're both in hotels today. So give my best to John and the Twin Cities team. And Tim, we're going to come back to you, so you can come back on.
Tim, you are
on mute.
Sounds like some really great learning ahead at ASCM Connect in Brussels. And to take a quick peek at the schedule, up-to-date schedule of sessions and activities, please visit our conference website. I'll include a link to that in our comments. And as Peter mentioned a moment ago, we have a flash sale going on through tomorrow, Friday, the 19th of April. Save 300 euros during this sale when you use the code FlashSale300. And we'll also include a link in the comments on that. And we look forward to seeing everybody in Brussels. So have a great day. Thank you both.